Right, and to speak a little bit more about this, we're joined now by the EFF's Deputy President, Floyd Shivambu. A very good evening to Mr. Shivambu, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Obviously, you have conferred with the Reserve Bank, as have others. We've heard the comments of the Reserve Bank governor saying that their investigations are still ongoing, but it has in the past said that it is obligated to keep taxpayer confidentiality. How does this influence what your next move is?
No, good evening, Tsepiso, and good evening to viewers of SABC. So there's a difference between what the South African Reserve Bank can do and what the South African Revenue Services can do. So the South African Revenue Services has got a legislative instrument and permissibility to could keep or conceal taxpayers' information. But the South African Reserve Bank is not a revenue collector. It is an organ of state which has got an obligation at all times to account truthfully and honestly to Parliament and to the people of South Africa. There is no law, not even a single piece of legislation that permits the South African Reserve Bank to refuse to answer questions that we ask as members of Parliament, as committees in Parliament. That is why we were surprised that it has been more than 4 weeks now that we have sent questions to the Reserve Bank to confirm or deny if they've ever interacted with the millions of foreign currency, of particularly US dollars, that have been found in the farm of Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. And they say that they cannot do that because they're still investigating. It doesn't make sense because there is a register in the South African Reserve Bank as to who is bringing foreign currency into the country and who is taking foreign currency out of the country and who is interchanging goods and services through foreign currency. But also it is not within South Africa's law to buy or to exchange goods through dollars or any other foreign currency except the legitimate currency, which is the rand in South Africa. So the Reserve Bank seems to be part of the systematic and systemic suppression and concealment and cover-up that is taking place to try to protect the sitting head of state who has been found to be on the wrong side of the law. That is why today we say that they must account before they come and speak about other issues, because they've got an obligation constitutionally to account to Parliament truthfully about every activity that they are mandated to do through the South African Reserve Bank Act, but also through the Constitution, which obliges all institutions of the state to report to Parliament truthfully at all times.
I want to understand what would be available to you in terms of information, whether in the public domain or whether you'd have to request it. And that is whether or not the president, through his sale of animals business, is an authorized dealer or is an in foreign exchange, whether that has limited authority or not in this regard, and whether or not he himself declared the value-added tax on these sales.
So now this is what happens, Tsepiso, with South Africa's currency regulations broadly, is that even when you bring dollars or pounds or euros or whichever currency that you bring into South Africa's territory, you are obliged to exchange that into a rand if you want to trade within South Africa. It is not permissible within South African laws to buy things through dollars or through euros. It is illegal. It is against South Africa's currency regulations. It's against our currency laws. So even if Mr. Ramaphosa claims that he was selling these wild animals and whatever he was selling in Phala Phala farm, if he utilized the dollar to exercise that exchange, it is against the law. So that is prima facie evidence now that he has violated the laws, because the foreign currency which is in his farm, one, was not declared. We know that it was not declared. That is why the Reserve Bank is running around not responding truthfully to the question. But even if it was declared, it is not permissible for anyone to trade through any other foreign currency, because if you permit all other people who bring foreign currency into the country to trade in South African territory with foreign currencies, you can literally create a parallel economy which does not pay taxes, which does not add anything to the National Revenue Fund, which does not generally contribute to the GDP growth, which is not detected, which cannot be enforced in terms of the laws and regulations that govern the movement of monies inside the country and outside of the country. So the manner in which these things have happened thus far, there is prima facie violations of the laws of this country, and the South African Reserve Bank is fully aware of that, and they seem evidently now to be part of the systemic concealment and cover-up that is taking place around Ramaphosa, and which of course we're going to reveal later on when we deal with the impeachment process, which we're going to commence very soon in Parliament.
All right. So I am asking this question so that we get an idea of the statutory authority on which you're proceeding with some of what you've put before Parliament. There is that 30-day window period just in terms of the exchange control rules. Do we know whether that was breached, that 30-day window? And also talk to me about Clause 34, 1B of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, and through that law, what would have been expected of the president in terms of reporting the presence of the money or the circumstances under which he obtained or was going to disperse or distribute the money?
So the section that you have quoted in regards to foreign currency exchanges relates to authorized dealers. So the South African Reserve Bank authorizes certain dealers who can be responsible for the exchange of foreign currencies into South African currency, which is the rand in this context. There is not even a single one authorized dealer which has come out to say that they've exchanged any foreign currency on behalf of Mr. Ramaphosa. But also there's a limit of just how much money can be brought as foreign currency into our territory. And the monies that are said to be in Phala Phala are far above what is permissible to be brought in as foreign currency for exchange purposes and for trading purposes in the country. And then two, the issue of PRECA, which is the Prevention of Corruption Act, obliges all South Africans and all people who are within or inside South Africa to report all criminal activities, particularly when it relates to financial issues and financial matters. And now it is evident that when Mr. Ramaphosa discovered that the stolen money in his farm was stolen by other people, he did not follow the criminal procedure systems of our country. He instead chose the gangster route of going to hunt against those who stole the money and even abused the South African Police Service. We know now as evidence that there were helicopters of the South African Police that were utilized. Certain members of the SAPS, without a case number which was recorded, were involved in chasing after the people who stole the stolen money in Phala Phala. And all of those things is violations of so many laws that are existing in our country, that govern our country. And that is why Mr. Ramaphosa must be held accountable, and we must not
we are running out of time.
The South African Reserve Bank.
Mr. Shivambu, we are running out of time. Do you therefore believe that the South African Revenue Services should have at some point then instituted, or rather the Reserve Bank should have instituted penalties? And the issue of the SAPS 2019 report, 2019-2020 annual report said there were no security breaches that occurred during protection duties, including at the president. Should they also then be held accountable for hiding this information?
No, the South African Reserve Bank was not supposed to issue any penalties. They were supposed to open a criminal case for violation of foreign currency regulations. There is a standing precedence of a person who was convicted in the Cape Town High Court for violation of the foreign currency regulations and was sentenced into 5 years imprisonment. And that is what the law says currently. So there is no one who is above the law in South Africa. We are all equal before the law. So the Reserve Bank has to be consistent with the law and apply the law to the fullest, because if certain laws apply to certain individuals and they don't apply to others, then we are a banana republic, and we cannot permit South Africa to be reduced into a banana republic by an irresponsible, greedy president who is busy gathering money from illegal sources, and when it is stolen from him, he engages in other illegal activities to try to retrieve the money which evidently was acquired illegally. Because if the money which he had in his farm was acquired legally, he would have gone through the proper legislative and legislated criminal procedure systems to recover the money. So it is evident now that the money which were under his pillows and sofas and mattresses and everywhere, it is very evident now that that money is stolen money, because if it was legally acquired, there could have been a legal process to chase after it, but clearly it was not legally acquired, and that is why he must be held accountable. And the impeachment process, which Parliament and all political parties are agreeing upon now, must reveal all these issues so that we can uproot the lawlessness and the corruption that defines the sitting president.
Thank you so much for your time, EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu, speaking to us there.